Hello class, this is Moses signing on. This video lecture teaches you about Java databases. You'll create a simple database with one table and learn how to connect to it. For the project, we're going to set up a new database. You'll then learn how to connect to this database. The database we'll create will be a simple one table up here rather than multiple tables connected together. You can indeed create multiple tables with Java DB, but we don't want to complicate things unnecessarily. Java uses something called JDBC or Java Database Connectivity to connect to databases. There's a JDBC API, which is the programming part, and a JDBC driver manager, which your programs use to connect to the database. JDBC allows you to connect to a wide range of databases, such as Oracle, MySQL, and a lot more. But we're going to use the inbuilt database you get with the Java Netbeans software. Yeah. The database is called JavaDB, a version of Apache Derby. It runs on a virtual server which you can stop and start from within Netbeans. To check that have everything you need, have a look at the Services tab in Netbeans here. Just like what you see on the screen. We have here the Files tab, Projects tab, and the Services tab. If you can see the Services tab here, click Window from the Netbeans menu. This is the window. From the window menu, you select Services. Then you should see something like this. Okay. Now let's expand the databases item to see a Java DB item and a driver section. So by clicking the plus here, and there you go. We have the Java DB here and the drivers here. So expand again the Java DB. So as you can see, we already have a previously created database here. So the idea is that you start the Java DB virtual server and then create and manipulate databases on the server. There should be a database code sample already set up, but don't worry if it's not there as well. We will create our own database anyway. In starting the virtual server, the first thing to do is to start the server. So right click on Java DB here, right click it. You'll see a menu appear. Look at your screen. And then select Start the Server. And give some times to the IDE. And have a look at the output window and you'll see a few messages appear here. If you have a firewall running, you'll need to let the Java DB server through. Once the server is up and running, you can create databases. You may start working with the databases now since the server is already up. Now that your server has been started, you can go ahead and create a database. So to create a new database, right click on JavaDB, right click it again. From the menu that appears, you select Create Database. So the Create JavaDB Database dialog box appear. Then type a name for your database in the first box. Let's call it Of course, again, do not forget your last name. Last name, employees, and last name, employees. Type any username and password, something a bit harder to crack than ours below. So, for example, so it's up to you what you want to be the username and password for your database. It's your choice. So mine, I'm gonna use mom says. It's up to me. My password would be. It's up to you too. What password would you like to? Okay, after typing the username, the password, and then after confirming your password, your choice, you may now click OK to create your database. It should then appear on the list. So let's click OK and give some time to the IDE to create the database. As you can see here, it's running, it's loading. How fast it is it depends on your processor. Now, here we have the newly created database highlighted in here. Now that the database has been created, you need to create a table in the database. To do so, right click on your database, the one that you just created. So from the menu that appears, you right click it, and then from the menu that appears, you select connect. As you can see, it's connecting, it's loading again. When a connection is made, you'll see some default folders for tables, views, and procedures. To see it, just expand the created database recently here. So here's now the tables, the views, and the procedures. To create a new table in your database, right-click the tables, here the tables folder. So right-click and then create table. When you click on the create table, as you can see, a dialog box appeared, the create table dialog box. From here, you not only type a name for your table, but you also set up the columns for the table. In the table name at the top, here, where our cursor is, so we just have deleted the default name of untitled. So we can now type a new name for your table. Let's call it workers. Let's add a last name, your last name first, then workers. You'll then have a table called workers, which is in the employees database. But you cannot click OK just yet, as the table has no columns. There's no columns in it. We want to create columns with the following names: the ID, first name, last name, job title. So how would you do it? Let's click here the add column. Then the add column dialog box appear. Let's type now the name or the field for that column. So for example, ID. And then let's give the data type for that ID, since we are expecting an integer value from the user. We choose integer and we make this as our primary key. Okay, so the ID column will hold a unique identifying number. This will identify a row in the table, a column with unique data in it is known as the primary key. Because it's the primary key, the column has to hold data. It can't hold a null value. Okay, so a null value just means there's no information there. The name is the name of the column in the table here, like ID, first name, and a lot more. The type is the data type. So example here, integer. And if you want to see more, just click the drop down list to see more. Okay. Then check or uncheck the constraints boxes as indicated. So for example, since this is a primary key, we click primary and then unique. Click OK to return to the create table dialog box. A new row is added. Okay, the one that we just created. We now have enough for the ID column in the table, so we can click the add column button on the right to add a new column to the table. And then the add column dialog box appear. Just repeat the same steps in adding column, and we have now here the 4 column names, the ID, the first name, last name, job title, and then the declared data type, the declared size. The size refers to the possible, for example, 30, the possible longest name, first name could be 30, the length. Okay, it refers to the length. So just click OK when you've entered all the information. So your table and table columns will then be created. Let's take a look at the tables now. Expand it. So it's the one that we just recently created. You have the Kahanda workers. And then as you can see, these are the fields that we just created. The ID, the first name, the last name, the job title. So the next thing to do is to add some records to the database table. A database table is like a spreadsheet in that it has rows and columns. Each row in our table has cells, so that is what referred to as fields. For an ID value, a first name, a last name, and a job title. Shortly, you'll learn how to write code to add new rows of information to the table, but you can use the Netbeans IDE to add rows as well. To add a new row to your table, right-click on your table name here. So from the menu that appears, select View Data. Then give some times again to create there you go, our editor's area. So when you click on the View Data, you'll see a new window appear in the main Netbeans window. This one. So you use the bottom half up window to enter new table rows. The top half is for SQL commands. So you'll learn more about them soon when we've finished adding rows. And then to add a new row, click the icon when the green plus symbol in the bottom, here, in the bottom half window. Here, when you hover to it, this is now the add. To add a new row, just click the icon with the green plus symbol in the bottom half of the window. Okay? And the insert record dialog box will appear. As you can see, there are text boxes for each column in our table. For the ID column, we'll use sequential numbering starting with 1. The second row in the table will then have an ID of 2, the third row 3, etc. The numbers are not the row numbers, they are just unique values for each ID field. We could have easily started with a value of 100 as the first ID number, the second number would then be 101, the third 102. So it's up to you as the database manager. Now we're going to enter records. For example, in ID, we enter 1. For the first name, just click it and then type the record. Then click again for the other row. Type the record. Here we type database admin, for example, job title. Then just repeat the same steps to add more record. So just click add row here to add more records. When done, you can now click OK. So when you finish adding the new rows, your Netbeans windows should look like this. Okay, so here are the records that we just added. Now we'll talk about the SQL commands. Let's learn a few SQL commands so that you can manipulate records in a table. SQL or SQL stands for Structured Query Language and is a way to query databases. You can select records, insert, delete, and update records, create tables, drop tables, and more besides. It's quite a powerful tool. SQL uses simple keywords to do the work. If you want to select all the records from a table, the words select and from are used. Just like what you see on the screen, we have the select asterisk from. So it's along with the all record symbol, which is the asterisk. If you looked at the top half of the Netbeans window, this one, you'll see that select statement has already been set up. Take note that SQL is not case sensitive. What we have here is select asterisk from says that contact workers fetch first 100 rows only. This says that select all the records from the table called workers. The admin part before the dot of workers is something called the schema. This describes the structure of the database but also identifies things like users and the privileges they have. Don't worry about schemas as we won't be going into them. In Netbeans, you run a SQL statement by clicking the run button on the toolbar. Here, this is the run button. And the results from the SQL statements are then displayed in the bottom half of the window. Here. Let's add another SQL statement here. This time we will use the word close. We use the word close to narrow down your search results. We have here the example. Select asterisk from the table, then the field, and then the value. This will serve as our filter. So after the keyword where you need the name of a column from your table, you then type an equal sign here, followed by a value. This one, as you can see, you have the programmer value. As an example, here's a SQL statement that returns all the programmers in our table. So to try this SQL statement out, right-click table name in the services area. Here is our services area. Here's our table name. You can right-click it, then choose execute command, or you can right-click in here and then choose execute command. Either of the two. So when you click on execute command, a new window appears. So you type the SQL statement and then click the run icon. So we have here the sample code using the where. After clicking the run icon here, the results will be displayed in the bottom half of the window here. So we search for record with job title programmer. As you can see, 2 rows are returned from the query. So we will leave SQL statements there as we now have enough to start programming. Before doing so, however, close down the connection to your table by right-clicking it in the services, here in the services tab. So from the menu, let's right-click here. From the menu, you choose or select disconnect. We'll connect to this database and table again using Java code this time. So what you had learned is about Java and databases, creating a database with Java, adding records to table, some sort of SQL commands, and then coming up next in the next video lectures would be how to connect to a database with Java code and connecting to the table.
Randy, Kiko el Crazy. Se acabó la cuarentena, el cuerpo lo sabe y la calle está llena.